You looked death in the eyes, and you escaped with an injury.
Long story short, I threw myself off a mountain. The guy below me is just like screaming his head off because he got blown up by RPG.
What is that like? So you've been in uniform / in an Army hospital doing Army rehabilitation stuff for 16 straight months. What is that even like, stepping into your house after 16 months?
Sorry, I started getting a little bit choked up there. I don't want to cry on camera.
Hello, everyone. Major Mark Insha, Public Affairs Officer for the Rhode Island National Guard. Today on our leadership podcast, we talked with Staff Sergeant Terry Rajsombath, a good friend of mine I've known for many years. Today we talked about post-traumatic growth, which is a psychological theory that describes the positive changes that can occur after a person experiences trauma or a life crisis. PTG can include new ways of thinking, living, and relating to others, as well as a greater sense of personal strength. Join us today as we talk about his combat experiences in Afghanistan, his recovery in Walter Reed Hospital, rebuilding his life after losing a dream, pursuing business interests, the adoption of a loved pet, and then the role of leadership and empathy in recovery. So join us. Welcome to the Rhode Island National Guard Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Major Mark Insha, Public Affairs Officer. Today we're joined by Staff Sergeant Terry Rajsombath, Public Affairs NCO and former 11 Bravo infantryman. We're here to talk a little bit about his experience over the course of his career and talk about something called post-traumatic growth. So, Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, sir.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. So you and I actually have known each other for quite some time. We didn't know that we knew each other. At one point, we served in the same infantry company.
Yeah.
I think we did the math at one point. We overlapped for like a month and a half or 2 months in this unit. You ended up deploying to Afghanistan with another unit. And I, obviously did not. I stayed in that unit. You went through your combat experience, and then years down the road, I commissioned, and I got a chance to command a company. You happened to be in that company as a public affairs specialist. That was 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how you count it, we've known each other for 9 years, or we've known each other for, 15 years. So anyway, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we want to. You got a great personal story. We wanted to share it with some people. We're here to talk about post-traumatic growth, but to set the stage for what that is and how you came by it, I think it's important to start at the beginning. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so in 2010, I deployed to Afghanistan. I was with the Connecticut National Guard. I did a really brief stint with the LURS, but I heard Connecticut was deploying, so I raised my hand. I was like, put me in, coach. And we deployed to Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, we were in a near ambush.
Right above us.
I was shot during the ambush. I was quickly medevaced to Launchstool and then Walter Reed. I stayed at Walter Reed for 10 months rehabilitating and underwent 12 surgeries there.
Yeah. And for those of you in the audience who maybe don't know what a near or a close ambush is, this is the enemy has set the stage. They know you're going to be somewhere. They've prepared a kill zone, and they themselves are physically within 50 meters of you, right? So like you've walked into a stage that they've set, and they trigger a trap. Near ambushes, you don't typically survive those. Like
no.
Those are. So when we say you were injured, it's like you looked death in the eyes, and you escaped with an injury.
I don't know the exact definition of a near ambush versus a far ambush, but I mean, anyone who's like watching, the term implies near, like they're right there, like you shouldn't survive. I didn't see it. My teammate later on told me that as we're making our way back onto a main road and we're walking back to our cop, he saw an arm swing out above us with an AK and start shooting, and then that set off the ambush where all around us and in like an almost L shape, they were getting shot at in the valley.
Yeah. And you were actually shot during this.
Yeah, so it's a really long story, which I don't mind sharing. I know the meat and potatoes of why I'm here is to talk about post-traumatic growth. But I made my way to a mountain. I was the Mark 48 gunner, so I had the light machine gun, and I was just laying rounds with me and another gun team, and then I felt that I was shot. When I was initially shot, I wasn't sure I was shot, which sounds crazy. But who's ever been shot before? Like, no, like, oh, that's like, I'm shot. But like after a few seconds, like I definitely knew I was shot, and I was on top of a mountain. And I was like way too far to get help from my guys. We're in this valley and there's machine guns going all around, enemy shooting, my guys are shooting, and I just kept shouting with my teammate's name, and like he didn't hear me. He didn't respond, so I knew he couldn't hear me, and I was ready to essentially die that day. But long story short, I threw myself off a mountain, which let me get closer to my guys. My guys found me. They dragged me to the gun trucks. They got me onto the cop. From there, they quickly got me stabilized, got me to launch stool in Germany, stabilized there for about 3 days. I woke up there after, I forget, it was like 2 or 3 days. I woke up later. It was a medically induced coma. And then they sent me to Walter Reed. From Walter Reed, I was there for 10 months, rehabilitating, and underwent 12 surgeries there.
Okay. Walter Reed for 10 months. You've told me some stories from there. We won't go deep into them.
Whatever you want to know.
But
open book.
I understand 10 months in Walter Reed itself can be fairly traumatic.
Yeah, I felt like I did another tour, honestly. And this is not to knock the men and women at Walter Reed at all. It's just physically and emotionally tough to be at a hospital for so long. So I got injured halfway through the deployment. So it's like almost like perfectly 6 months in, and then add on the next 10 months, it just felt like maybe not another tour. It felt like, what was the term back in the day in Iraq? The pause. Stop loss.
Oh, you got stop loss.
I felt like I got stop loss. Yeah, and I was like, I just want to go home at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're guardsmen. We're both sort of traditional National Guardsmen. So the idea of being activated in uniform and away from home for 16 months?
Right.
So that's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the home for me. It was just I just wanted to get back to living life.
Yeah, that's fair. You have a great story. May not make it into the edited version of this, but I love hearing this story. You got visited by the late General Colin Powell, right?
Oh, you should definitely keep this in. Yeah, Colin Powell. Oh man. So we have a lot of visitors, and depending on the level of the guest, they would like shave or whatever. And we had one nurse going around telling people, "You need to shave," and I was like, okay, somebody big's coming in, and Colin Powell walks in, and I've never really followed politics in my life, and I had no idea who he was, but I just knew he was somebody of significance. And so we're talking, and from the sound of it, it sounded like he was going from room to room, shaking hands and quickly leaving. And then he comes in my room, he starts asking me questions, and then I tell him I was in Afghanistan, I was injured, and then he's looking out my window, and then he asks me my opinion on the ROEs, and I gave it to him straight. I gave him my thoughts. I wasn't ranting, but I was not too long ago in Afghanistan. I was giving him my thoughts and opinions, and he stood there for I don't know, maybe 3 minutes just thinking about what I said. And then he turned around, he gave me a coin, he shook my hand and walked away. And then later I did my research on him, and I bought several books. And I was amazed that a man like Colin Powell would want to know my opinions on the ROEs in Afghanistan. And I just have so much respect for him. I know he passed away maybe 2 years ago.
I don't remember. I think it was post-COVID.
But yeah, I have a lot of coins, but his means the most to me. I have immense respect for that man.
Okay, so that's not the story I thought you were going to share.
Oh, what's the story?
I thought he gave your roommate a hard time for not shaving.
Oh, that was the person next to me. Yes. Yeah. The person next to me, I saw my physical therapy. He was like, I was telling him the same story about him asking me the ROEs, and I don't know, maybe really glowing the fact that somebody would want to know my opinions. And my friend was just like, yeah, I didn't like him. He made me shave. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why that story in particular just tickles me, but the idea that you're in a hospital for injured combat veterans rehabilitating, and here comes this 4-star general. I think he was the Secretary of Defense at the time. Yeah, comes through and just starts giving this guy a hard time about not shaving. I don't know. To me, that's one of the most Army stories I've ever heard.
I'd probably, if I could grow facial hair, I'd probably get upset too if he made me shave. So, I get devil's advocate.
All right. So you get injured. You go through 10 months at Walter Reed, 12 surgeries. Mm. I assume that wasn't a painless experience, the 12 surgeries.
No, it was a lot of pain. I mean, the first 6 surgeries were to get out all the shrapnel. So I don't know. Did I mention the bullet went into my leg? It hit my bone and exploded. So essentially, the bullet became a little mini grenade. Shrapnel went this way. Shrapnel came this way, which took out a chunk of my hip. It was a 7.62. The doctors were like, "Oh, you were shot by a really big bullet." They didn't say if it was a 7.62 or not. But given that the enemy we were fighting had either AKs or PKMs, good chance it was a 7.62. And so there was just so much shrapnel on my leg. It took 6 surgeries to get out as much as they could. And at that point, they were like, "Listen, we're not going to do any more damage to your leg getting out shrapnel." The last time I saw it underneath an X-ray, it looked like a Christmas light just glowing in my thigh. So yeah, the first 6 surgeries to get shrapnel, and then the other 6 surgeries were just like complications. Things went wrong, so they had to go back and fix it.
Okay. Eventually, you get released.
Yes.
And you come home.
Yeah.
What do you do with your life? First, let me back up. Okay. What is that like? Like, so you've been in uniform / in an Army hospital doing Army rehabilitation stuff for 16 straight months. You come home. Like, what is that even like, stepping into your house after 16 months?
So I had some leave time at Walter Reed. So Christmas time would take leave. That portion felt, I don't know, I guess like basic training. You put pause, on the training and go back home. So I wasn't weirded out by that, but I think I didn't really have a chance to comprehend it all. It was just bing, bam, boom. It was, I'm in Afghanistan, and now I'm in this ambulance, and I'm just dealing with the circumstances, taking it day by day. But I do remember specifically when I was in the ambulance being brought to Walter Reed, I was just super happy. It was probably one of the happiest moments of my life, which is really odd if you were there, because here I am, I'm completely messed up physically. I'm on this bunker in the ambulance with a guy below me, and the guy below me is just like screaming his head off because he got blown up by RPG. And I know that just because he kept saying, like, I got blown up by an RPG. I don't know, like he was just saying that to himself. And he was in so much pain, and I thought it was odd because I was so happy. I was like, I am finally home. It just made me so happy, like knowing that like I was in good hands.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of used this language earlier in the podcast, but you looked death straight in the face, and then you woke up from a medically induced coma, having survived that, and now you were in the United States in the hands of phenomenal medical providers. Your chance of survival is now pretty damn close to 100%. I imagine relief. I imagine gratitude. I imagine some of these positive emotions.
I don't think I just had time to process it. I just dealt with it one at a time, because there was always something happening with, I had 6 specialist teams with me. So it was always something happening medically. I would say the only thing that kept crossing my mind was I was really sad and disappointed, like knowing that my career as an infantryman ended, because I had such big goals to go active duty and Ranger School and all those cool guy schools. Like I just knew, because the doctors flat out told me like I'd never run again. So.
Okay. All right. So eventually you get released. You come home. You're never going to run again.
Mm-hmm.
You stayed in the Army. Why'd you stay in the Army?
Because I heard the public affairs team was deploying to Afghanistan, and I had I liked photography, so I was just trying to get back in the fight.
Okay, you thought the pad was going to take you to Afghanistan?
No, the pad was supposed to go to Afghanistan. A lot of units that year got nixed, so the pad did not deploy to Afghanistan.
Okay, so wow. Let's unpack that. You get out of the hospital after 16 months. Mm-hmm. You get told you're never going to run again. And you find a unit that Like you want to get back in the fight. You find the first unit that you think is going to take you back to Afghanistan.
Right. I can't, honestly, I can't, and I want to be complete 100% accurate. I can't remember exactly if it was first I found out that I'm going to Afghanistan. I just know they said, hey, listen, you need to find a new unit, a new MOS. So I have a interest in photography. So I heard them out. But I do know the selling point to me was, hey, we're going to Afghanistan. It was, at the time, Captain Zakaria, now Lieutenant Colonel, and she was interviewing me. But once I heard they were going to Afghanistan, I was like, oh, I'm 100% in. I was supposed to reclass. After I reclassed, deploy right away.
Okay. I wonder if this is true, if this is commonly true with many people. The desire to sort of almost go right back to the source of trauma. Maybe, I don't know. If this is me putting words in your mouth, please push back.
No.
It's almost like there's unfinished business.
Yeah, that's absolutely like how I felt, unfinished business.
You know, like you missed a sense of closure, and it almost feels like if you can go back and do it again or go back and finish, it would give you that sense of completeness.
I think for me personally, probably not. I was young and I just wanted to, stay in the fight.
Okay. So obviously you didn't go back to Afghanistan.
No.
You stayed here stateside, and you had to put your life back together on your own. You went back to being a traditional M-Day soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you're listening back home, M-Day refers to the promise you hear in the commercials. 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. So you're not a full-time soldier. You're a civilian. You're working jobs and making it all work, and then 2 days a month you put on a uniform and come here and do G.I. Joe stuff. What was that like? Like, how do you put back together your civilian life after you've been, physically harmed in your soldier life?
It was like a giant existential crisis. Like you asked me earlier on how I felt and, the process of being away from Afghanistan and back home. I look back and like the overwhelming feeling was just me missing, like having a heartbreak that I will never be an infantryman again. It's when I left Walter Reed and came back home, that was still what I largely remember feeling. I was just constantly sad and a bit depressed, kind of like as if you were dating somebody and you were really in love and you were like just in cloud nine, this relationship, everything was working out, and then suddenly that person just never picked up your phone call again. There's no answers. They're just done, and you're just never gonna have that relationship and those feelings again. That's how I felt with the infantry. Like with the infantry, like I loved everything about it. I loved the training. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the missions. I wanted to go active duty, and I would have went active duty if the recruiter wasn't playing games and giving me only 11 Charlie as an option. But I wanted to make that my career, and I felt like that was the community that I would do well and thrive in and excel. And, people spend their life trying to figure out what they want to do, and I thought I found what I want to do with my life. And take that away from me, it's like, what am I going to do? It's just, I guess maybe it's akin to like, I'm not, trust me, I was no high-speed infantryman. I was barely an infantryman. I was not SF, that guy. But like, I knew that's where I wanted to be in life. But I think that's probably akin to these athletes that were like, they had their thing, they retire, and now what now? They're kind of like sad. For me, it was like, I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have any like majors I wanted to like go into. Like, this might possibly be the thing that brings me happy, that brings me fulfillment, brings the world fulfillment, something I could make money on. All I knew was I just wanted to be infantry, then probably, get some cool schools, probably go contract security. And if I don't die in combat, I'll just keep doing it. I never saw a life where I am technically disabled and now I got to do something else because it's just not an option. So I was just super sad for a really long time.
Do you think losing your dream or losing your plan was as traumatic or more traumatic than the actual incident itself?
Yes, most likely. I don't know why I don't struggle with PTSD. I just don't. But I think I spent too much of my life being sad. I mean, I was always proactive. I went to URI. I was working on a degree. But the thing was, for years, I was just drinking every night, trying to like numb this sad feeling. And it's like my life wasn't falling apart. I wasn't some alcoholic mess, but I was definitely letting myself have a pity party for a really long time.
Yeah, there's probably audience members listening to that right now being like, no, that sounds like PTSD, bro.
Yeah, no, I get that all the time. Maybe they're right, maybe they're not. I don't feel like I have PTSD. I'm sure like there are some residual effects because, like everybody goes through experience and you don't come back in the same shape or form. They're going to be a bit different. But I don't think I have PTSD.
Okay. So when I reacquainted with you, when you and I re-met each other, I don't know how to say this, 2015, our lives intersect again. I become the commander of the pad after Lieutenant Colonel Zakaria. And so I meet you then, and you are like 12 to 14 hours a day deep in your business.
Okay.
So obviously you got out of Walter Reed like what, 2012? Late 2011?
2011.
Yeah. So you're like 4 years deep into this business. Tell me about launching a business.
So I started an online t-shirt business. Like I roll my eyes because like everybody has like a t-shirt business. And in hindsight, what I think I know now is, and let me backtrack it just a little bit.
Yeah.
So after I got a Walter Reed, I got a bullseye tattooed on my elbow. And for me, I found that I realized I needed to set a new goal in life, that I needed something to focus on so I could keep moving forward. Like you can't steer a parked car, right? And I knew just sitting there, just like lamenting, wouldn't do anything. And like when I was at Walter Reed, I was reading this book called Moonwalking with Einstein, and the journalist essentially was covering these average people who would go on these like competitions where they would have like 6 stacks of cards and they would shuffle it and they would memorize a stack of cards and flip it over. And it was a competition, and that motivated me to want to do that. So I'm in the hospital, I'm memorizing stacks of cards, and then I started getting back into personal training. I started working on getting my certification. And then online, I got my scuba diver's certification. And then I did an internship at the Photo Senate Gallery. And I started feeling better about myself. I realized that just making moves in life made me feel better. And just by having an objective, just lessen the pain. So I got the bullseye tattooed on my elbow. But for some reason, I didn't make the connection later. When I started the business, I was helping a buddy who tried to make his own t-shirt business online, and he kept failing. And I kept giving him suggestions because like I'm an optimistic person. And then I was like, you know what? I'll help you make this business. And so I latched on, and I just, like you said, I went all in on this business, like just not sleeping, pouring all of my money. And now in hindsight, years later, I know it's because I was latching on to a mission, something different, something where I felt like I could give my time and energy to something greater than just myself.
You know, I think that bears true outside of just yourself, Ando, by the way. Shameless plug, may not make it into the final version of this podcast, but at the end of World War II, we had millions of veterans coming home, and we gave them 2 benefits that were today lost in the background of all the myriad benefits that humans get, but at the time were revolutionary: VA home loans and the GI Bill. And we took millions of veterans who had just seen some of the most horrific things humans have ever done to one another. We gave them free housing, we gave them free college, and they gave us the longest unbroken streak of economic growth in the history of mankind. And I don't think that's coincidence. I think when we talk about post-traumatic growth and the just absolute throwing yourself into something productive, throwing yourself just wholeheartedly into some new venture as a means of getting through, getting over, compensating, whatever verb you want to attach to it, but just as a means of expressing that growth. I think there's some commonality there. I think that's normal. I think that is the healing process as intended. Tell me if this is out of bounds. We'll drop it. Can you talk about Gabby?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, what about her? Gabby is my dog who passed away.
Yeah, I mean, she came into the picture very shortly after you got out of Walter Reed, right?
I don't remember exactly.
Gabs was already there when I was your commander in 2015.
Okay, but what about Gabby?
I mean, she's post-deployment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did she play a role in your recovery? Did she play a role in? She certainly played a role in your life.
So Gabby was a dog I had from a friend of mine. I'm trying to think of a way to say this without having to cut it, but I wasn't anticipating having a dog, but I said yes to a puppy one night, and it was the best mistake ever. And before my deployment with Kosovo, I had to put her down. She had she had a brain tumor, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I had the same thing happen. I had to put Argos down right before I left for Cuba.
Yeah, you can be crying on camera.
So all right. So here's my theory as your friend, right? Something a podcaster should never be, is friends with his guest. But I think, I've known you for 9 years, and Gabs was the most humanizing part of your life. The part of Terry that was most vulnerable. The part of Terry that was most identifiable. The most sympathetic. The most human part of you.
Okay, yeah.
Was Gabby. I follow you on Instagram. I follow you on Facebook. So I see all of your business. I see all of your personal life.
Yeah.
And all of your personal life, more or less, was Gabby.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure where I'm driving with this, other than to say I think I wouldn't be quick to write her off as being a part of your post-traumatic growth journey.
Okay. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have thought of that way. Sorry, I started getting a little bit choked up there. I don't want to cry on camera. But yeah, Gabby, I had her since she was a puppy, and she developed a brain tumor. I've raised her for 8 years. And then she got her brain tumor. And I think she made me a better human being.
Yeah, imagine that. A canine teaching us how to be better humans.
Yeah. So yeah, she had a brain tumor, and before she passed away, I took her to the Grand Canyon. I did a triathlon, and on the way there, I took her traveling with me, and she got to see the Grand Canyons. And like I said, I had to put her down the night before I deployed to Kosovo.
So I'll ask: would the Terry of 2009 get a dog?
No, and it's not like I didn't like dogs. I'm not the kind of guy to like kick a dog ever. That's not me. But at the time, I don't know. I wasn't an animal guy. But having a dog definitely made me softer, and I feel like a better human being.
I want to talk about one more project, a very humanizing project you've been working on at least since 2015.
Okay.
You had a buddy in Afghanistan who didn't come home.
Right.
And you've been writing. Well, I'll let you tell the story, but you've continued interacting with his family, his kids.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, my buddy Holloway, who was my fire team. So anyone who doesn't know how fire teams work, a fire team is a small 4-man, 5-man team, and it's kind of like when you watch those movies with police officers in a car, and there's always two of them. That was Holloway. He was my guy. He was always with me. And stateside, he was murdered. And so when I went to his funeral, it made me really sad thinking of his children. He has 3 children, all very young, from the ages of, at the time, I think like 3 to 7. And it made me sad thinking how his kids will never know the legacy of his father. Obviously, his friends will talk about him as a character. Aunts and uncles will be able to tell his children about him as a person, but no one will really know like his history as a soldier better than me, like the guy who was always with him. So I started writing children's stories, telling stories of his father in Afghanistan. Well, I'll try to couple it in with some sort of life lessons. You know, I mean, obviously you can't really talk about firefights of little kids, but it's more lessons like, you know, there was explosion, it was dark, and we were scared, but like, you know, we were brave and we went out to the dark and we got our job. We did the job.
Yeah. So you tell stories of heroism about their father to them.
Yeah, I teach them stories about their dad. Like Holloway was his name, and we called him Hollywood. So that's something I feel like, you know, made a little story about that. You know, we called your dad Hollywood.
Has that helped you sort of work through any of your own? How has that helped you?
I don't think it has, to be honest. I mean, I grew up in a Christian household. I'm not religious anymore. I don't mean that to knock religion or anybody who's religious. But I grew up religious, and so we did a lot of community service, you know, going from door to door, trying to raise money for XYZ. And so I think I just have that natural spirit of wanting to, you know, be your brother's keeper. And Holloway was definitely my brother in arms. So I want to help him. I don't think I did that intentionally to kind of soothe my own soul.
Looking back, yeah, granted, not your intention, right? 100%, I believe you when you say there was no desire to help yourself. That you, again, I've known you a long time. 100% believable when you tell me you did this for Holloway. My question now is, looking back, did capturing those memories in a succinct, publishable way help you work through anything? Did it help you sort of at least gather your thoughts? Was there anything out of that you got out of that?
Honestly, no. As far as like if we're staying with the subject of post-traumatic growth, I think I did all that while I was at Walter Reed. Growing up, I've always written in a journal, you know, and while I was at Walter Reed, I wrote like this 13-page entry where I just talked about what happened. And writing for me has always been the catharsis to release any pain and anger and codify my thoughts and feelings so I get a better understanding of what happened, why I felt what I felt, and whether I was right or wrong. And so writing has always been my therapy.
Okay.
Aside from going to the gym and just, you know, letting it out.
All right, so I've pitched two ideas on post-traumatic growth. I want to hear from you now. Where do you think your post-traumatic growth led you?
What do you mean by led me?
Let me try and formulate this question. How did your experience shape who you are today in a way that you never would have become without the experience? Right? Like you were on one trajectory, 2009, Terry had this life goal, right? Clearly you are very far divorced from that life path.
Right.
Part of it is imposed on you by the Army. Army won't let you be an 11 Bravo. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. But part of that is your reaction to that, right? Part of that is your voluntary choices that design and build this new road. So I'm curious, you know, we bandy about the term post-traumatic growth with the expectation that you are bigger and stronger at the end of your trauma, the way that maybe overusing a muscle in the gym might result in bigger, stronger muscles. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm asking is, from your foxhole, you know, how are you bigger and stronger from your experience?
I mean, I think the simple answer for that is just that, you know, life experiences gives you lessons. So that's probably the superficial thing. But But I think for me personally, I think it's helped me get a better understanding of my mind and how I work, why I work, and how to go about that. And I think for me personally, I think I've learned that I'm the type of person that I need goals in my life. I need a mission. Some people feel like they need a giant community. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying I didn't have a community, but some people might need to find religion. I personally found out that I need to find a goal that aligns with that aligns with my sense of values and motivates me and makes me want to wake up and get after it. Without that, I'm just sad drinking my rum and coke and just puttering around in life.
Okay, so your post-traumatic growth like unlocked a level of self-awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, go ahead.
No, please.
And like, I would never want to give advice to anyone struggling, because I know that everyone has their own personality and what works for them. But I feel confident now as someone who's a little more seasoned in life, where it's the same advice I tell high school kids to say, hey, listen, you need to be proactive in life. You just never know the things you're gonna like in 5 to 10 years, or dislike, or where life could take you if you don't start taking action. Because a lot of people are just very passive in life, and I think particularly if you're very if you're dealing with a lot of internal issues, I think you just need to move your body and start getting active with your mind and see where that can lead you. Obviously, there's therapy, there's communities that can help you. For me personally, I do know now where it's like, if I'm in a rut, I need to start moving and making things happen and finding a level of fulfillment. Of course, someone could just say, I'm trying to keep myself busy, so to avoid any problems. I don't think I'm avoiding a problem. I think I'm bringing a sense of meaning to my life, and that works for me. And maybe for somebody else, and I just like to provide that kind of like food for thought if I'm talking to somebody else.
Yeah, it's fair. And I am very sympathetic to the desire not to give the advice, right? When you're talking about post-traumatic growth, whatever you choose to call it, post-traumatic growth is common in our industry, but perhaps if we worked in some other industry, we wouldn't even be familiar with the phrase. But it's very easy to stray into something very dismissive and pithy, like, that what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, right? Which is kind of like this condescending, dismissive way of addressing other people's suffering. And that's certainly not what we want to do. When we talk about post-traumatic growth, we never want to minimize anyone else's suffering. What I think you're driving at, and I think I agree with this, but correct me if I'm misquoting you or mischaracterizing what you just said. It seems as though what you're driving towards is it's always better to do something than to do nothing. That when you suffer an event that causes trauma, you kind of have two choices. You can live in it or you can move through it. And if you choose to live in it, you're never going to make it any better, right? Like what you're not trying to say is that moving through it is easy. What you're not trying to say is that moving through it is painless, or that moving through it is quick, right? You're not saying any of those dismissive, condescending things. What you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have to move through it, because if you don't, your only other option is to live in it.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, I honestly don't think I've ever spent time thinking of post-traumatic growth. But if I had to try to codify it, I think that's pretty accurate. I've taken the stance in my own personal life where it's like I know like I have to take some sort of action to drive myself forward. Because some people have always said things to me where they admired the fact that I dealt with the pain and you went through all those surgeries. But to me, it's just like when it comes to like the physical pain, you don't have an option. You don't have an option. You either do the physical therapy and start walking, or you'll never function correctly. I mean, now like you look at me, people don't ever know I was traumatically injured, but like I didn't have an option. Yeah, maybe I could have like not have been the kind of person I am and like be a physical go-getter, but at some point you're still probably most likely get up and walk and no one would ever know. But spiritually, mentally, you do have that option of checking out. And that's what I take away for post-traumatic growth. I think that the ambush could have mentally and spiritually broken me. And I definitely went through that period of sadness, but at some subconscious, conscious level, I just knew like I had to get active with life again, or else I just would not be in a good place.
One of the experiences I've had as a company commander is you get to interact with and observe and be a part of the life of hundreds of people. And somehow everyone's problems become your problems when you're the company commander. I've never had a soldier who had an experience like yours, but I've had dozens of soldiers with other traumatic experiences. I've had soldiers who lost their homes and became homeless. I've had soldiers who lost their marriages and became divorced. I've had soldiers who lost children. Soldiers who go broke, soldiers who lose their business. And all of it's traumatizing, right? All of it is human suffering at its worst. It seems to me that your story has a level of universal applicability, in that in every case, I can't think of a single case where my soldier would have benefited from doing nothing. I can't think of a single case where literally almost any action they could take wouldn't have been better than no action. With some common sense left and right limits. You can obviously make your situation worse if you do like the super wrong thing, but within the boundaries of common sense, just putting one foot in front of the other and taking their next breath is better than not. I have a friend who's a therapist. She's a professional psychologist. And she subscribes very heavily to the fake it till you make it treatment syndrome, or treatment regimen. You know, the advice she gives many of her patients is, I know everything's broken. I know nothing works, including you. But I just need you to fake it until our next session, or even just fake it through this session. Like, I know you don't want to talk. Just say anything, right? Like, and she starts to get them to open up by faking it until they make it. I know you don't want to talk, so just talk about anything you can. Anything. Color of the wall, right? And that has some success to it over the long run. It feels as though this is the same principle as post-traumatic growth. That if you can get to the far side of it, the actual act of just walking out of your own suffering, just the process of getting through the survival portion of trauma is itself sort of the foundation of growth.
Yeah. Just that movement, just getting off the X.
Yes, great terminology. Getting off the X. That's the end of my questions, but I don't think we're done here. What's on your mind? I see those wheels turning back there.
I mean, I really don't have anything specifically on my mind. Talking about post-traumatic growth is just kind of a scary subject because it's the inverse of post-traumatic stress, which is pretty touching it on its own. And I'd hate to try to dole out advice. I guess, I came out here to want to give my history and my truth, so people could just use me as an opportunity to reflect and just reflect off of my experiences.
How much of your story did you have to walk alone, and where do you think leadership may have helped or couldn't have helped? Because this is a leadership podcast, so all the company commanders out there who inherit a young Sergeant Rajsombath. Did I get that right? Did I finally get that right?
It's the J. You got it. Sir.
Yeah. Only took 9 years. Like how do you deal with, how do you care for a soldier who's suffering?
I think most good leaders it's a standard stuff where it's like you just check in on your person, try to be positive, because the self-growth can't start from the outside. It has to start from the inside. Something has to break. And I had a lot of good people that were there for me at Walter Reed, where just some days are just awful. I didn't mention earlier that when I was at Walter Reed, I mentioned earlier that I grew up religious, but I lost my sense of religion at Walter Reed, and that added to the pain, because growing up being religious and your go-to is prayer, and then you just don't believe in prayer anymore. It felt very lonely. It felt very, I felt very isolated. But I do know talking to people always made me feel better. Before every surgery, the chaplain would show up and he'd talk to you. And I'm pretty sure it was an SOP that they had to follow, and I'm sure they were happy to follow it. But before every surgery, a chaplain would show up and we'd talk and just shoot the breeze, and that always felt good. So I think for me personally, I don't think leadership had to go too far. I think you just had to be a lending ear, and I think some places where it's where everyone's broken. I mean, at Walter Reed, everyone was messed up, and so at some point, I definitely met a lot of people, whether leaders or the staff, where it's you're just another person, and they forget that you're going this hard time, because for them it's just their daily work. So encountering those people just compounded life for myself, and I know other soldiers that were there that were injured. So as simple as it is, the kind act just goes a long way. So just be kind, be understanding, because all the bad leaders that said certain things still burn in my brain, and I know obviously I should let it go because it's living rent free. But I think of it and it makes me so angry. But all the good doctors that had kind things to say, that didn't rip off my bandage on my leg at 4 a.m. if I waiting me to wake up, or believe me when I said something was wrong and there was a pain. Those people stand out in my brain, and they didn't have any other opportunity or reason not to be any kinder than the other doctors or staff members I met. But their kindness really stuck with me. So taking the time to just be kind and really went far for me.
Oh, that's good feedback. It can be very emotionally heavy caring for a soldier who's going through it. I won't share any specifics, but again, when you were one of my soldiers in my company, you were, again, 14 hours a day deep in your T-shirt business. And I remember you sharing exactly how much debt you had gotten into building this business, which you've since paid off. But it was a big number. I won't share it for privacy reasons, but that was a source of constant stress for me.
Yeah.
Because two reasons. One, it was a small unit, so I knew you guys very well, and I cared about you guys a lot. And the things that you guys went through resonated with me more deeply than if I had commanded a more traditional company of 100. Really, there were literally 5 of us. Cadian made 6, and then he left, and there were 5 of us again. There was one drill. You had worked all through the night. I don't remember if you were printing T-shirts or designing T-shirts, but you literally didn't sleep from Saturday into Sunday, and on Sunday you were a wreck. And I sent you home because I was like, you have to just go. You have to sleep.
Yeah.
And then you never texted us when you got home. I said, Terry, you got to go home. Go get some sleep. Text us when you get home, and you never did. I think I was trying to convince the guys to go to your house to make sure you were still alive. I think eventually you called Pete or something.
Well, Pete drove me home.
Is that what it was?
That's
Pete
what it
drove
was.
you?
Yeah, he drove me
okay.
home. Yeah.
All right. I don't remember these details, but here's the crux of the story is that when people you care about suffer, it can be hard. And that's a part of leadership that is pretty unglamorous, but important. So, and I'm not saying that I did it especially well. I felt very helpless. Another member of that unit went through like a really ugly divorce at the same time. Real ugly. And again, I felt very helpless as a leader. Like, here's a guy I care a lot about. Like, I know him really well, and I care a lot about him, and he's going through it. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. I don't know how to make him feel better. I don't know how to encourage him to just start that first step, take that next breath to work his way through. And here I am 10 years later. I still don't exactly know what to do.
That's tough. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do either, but I think I'm sure that somebody's out there that's got an actual tactical response to that. Like, would be great. But again, for me personally, just knowing there was somebody out there who wholeheartedly wanted the best for me and would be there meant a lot, because so this is just for me personally, but like, I'm not the kind of guy, if I have problems or pain or any like troubles, I don't want to go to somebody, unload on them. And so while I was at Walter Reed, like, I knew my family member friends were there. I knew I could call them at any moment, and it wouldn't be an issue. But I didn't want to do that. And I never said this to my family members at all, or my friends, because I don't want to make them feel bad. But like, one day, all the calls stopped, all the Facebook messages stopped, and I'm still at Walter Reed. I'm there. I didn't know I was gonna be there for 10 months, but I was still there. And like, people stopped calling. There wasn't anybody texting me, anybody tagging me. And for a guy who's like this tough guy who doesn't need anybody there, it hurt a lot to just go through all this on my own, because it was just me at Walter Reed. There was nobody else. And I just remember, like, it was pretty painful, but I would use logic with myself and realize, like, the world is just going forward. Like, you know what I mean? Doesn't mean my family members don't love me. It doesn't mean my friends don't care about me. They've got their own issues. Not every day someone's gonna be like, hey, Terry, are you good? And this and that. But emotionally, it really bothered me. So I remember, if I just had someone being kind, whether it was the doctor or a staff member, it just meant so much more to me during that time of just hardness or sadness. So I don't know, maybe, like, again, if you're a leader, then just taking the time to, like, letting your soldier know that you're there, the XO's there, or anybody within your unit is there. Because off the top of my head, I could think of a million situations that just infuriated me at Walter Reed. Some family members wanted to be nice and host a barbecue on Sunday. I didn't want to go to the barbecue because I wanted to be alone. And some staff members said, well, it'd be really nice if you went and showed your appreciation. And like, that just made me want to explode on the spot, because like, I'm not here to make you feel better. So like, I have so many examples like like that in my brain that I know, like I said, it shouldn't be, I shouldn't be living with, but like that made me so angry. But I just remember anytime someone was kind, that went such a long way. So I don't know if there's tactically anything you could do as a leader to remedy the situation where, a family member is going through something traumatic like the loss of a child or losing a business. But I think if you could let them know in some way that you are there for support, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And I think that should come almost naturally. Like if you don't love your soldiers, it's probably time to just sort of check the box on the green tab and go to staff.
Right.
And I don't, love's a tough word. English is a little imprecise. In Greek, there's like 4 words for love. There's eros, which is romantic love. There's philia, which is like family love, brother to brother. And then there's agape, which is sacrificial love. It refers to when you would prioritize someone else above yourself. You would give of yourself to or for someone. So when I say you need to love your soldiers, definitely stay away from eros. Definitely not talking about eros. I'm talking about agape. I'm talking about sacrificial love, that you would give of yourself for the good of your soldiers. Mm. If you have that, it is almost instinctual to be kind when they're hurting, right? Like, because it costs you next to nothing, right? All it costs you is a little emotional vulnerability and a kind word. So 3.5 seconds of your day and a little emotional vulnerability. And then you give to them the knowledge that someone cares, right?
Yeah.
And that should just feel natural. When you go to like a preschool, you see empathy is like one of the very first emotions a kid learns. So I've got a 15-month-old daughter, right? Beautiful little girl. She knows some very basic emotions. She certainly knows joy. She knows sadness. She knows frustration. She literally showed empathy at less than a year old. She sees another kid crying. She walks right up and starts trying to make that kid feel, but she sees mommy crying. She sees daddy crying. Like, she just instinctually knows. She wants to give a hug. She'll start petting your face, or in her case, patting your back, because she knows.
Yeah.
So I say this because to demonstrate that empathy it's so basic. It's so foundational to the human experience. And it's just years of sort of callous training that burns that out of us.
Right, especially depending on the West, like it's harder per se in an infantry unit than being, an admin.
Yeah, well, that drives at another podcast eventually we'll have about cultures. But yeah, there's definitely a culture of emotional aloofness, emotional hardness, which is completely understandable, right? Like, what we do in the Army is, we'll just reach back and use the word traumatic over and over again. Like, what we do, like killing bad guys and breaking their stuff is an intrinsically traumatic thing to do, right? And so I think it follows quite naturally that the MOSs who have to do that most often and are closest to that develop a very hardened, aloof, cool guy, nothing can touch me, nothing can hurt me attitude.
Right.
Right?
You can still be that guy.
Yeah.
And still be kind, as long as that, as long as the soldier knows that you care about them. Yeah.
So that's a persona that you can have projected towards much of your life. I don't think that's a persona you should be projecting at 100% of your life.
Right.
Go ahead and bring that into your marriage and let me know how that works out for you. And following on that same principle, you shouldn't direct that attitude towards your soldiers. I don't believe that you should. And there are many things you have to do as a leader that will hurt. You know, you discipline a soldier that you like. You discipline a soldier that you love. You discipline a soldier who, prior to this, had never done anything wrong. That hurts. But that's a feature, not a bug. It's supposed to hurt. If it doesn't hurt when you punish your soldiers, it's time to check that box.
Right.
Like, sorry, bro. You like check the box. You had your green tab time. Get out. But that's Mark talking. That's not the official Army policy.
I think we all know that like kindness is just a low hanging fruit baseline of being a good leader. But I also think, you know, I was also where I was saying that thinking of other instances where I've seen leadership where it's like they lack that ability to be kind, and it's not good for the soldier, obviously. But in the context that we're talking now of someone who's being traumatized, I just think again like Walter Reed, where it's like I'm a pretty standard, like, you know, tell me what to do, I'm gonna go do it. But just I'm thinking back, you know, when I was at Walter Reed and I had a room and they did a room inspection, they opened up my fridge and, you know, I'm like, I got one good leg, I'm on this wheelchair trying to wheel around, and he's literally got his finger and he opens the fridge and he's touching, you know, the rubber, the between the door and the fridge.
Like the gasket?
Right, the gasket, and he's like, you need to clean this. And I just remember, like, I had a bad day where something went wrong with surgery. I'm like, this is the last thing I need, where, like, my NCOs give me a hard time about a room inspection. It's like the place is, like, actually clean. Can you please not make my life any harder? And I understand maybe, like, he's trying to, like, maybe in his mind, he's warding off, like, you know,
stagnation.
Yeah, stagnation, keeping me in the fight mentally, whatever. I don't know. But I just remember that day, I was like, I was going through a hard time. Like, I don't need this right now. I just found out I need to go back to surgery again. And you're talking about, you're literally running your finger on the gasket of my door frame of my fridge and give me a hard time. I'm just like, I don't need this right now.
That's the most Army story I've heard today. Like, oh, here's a soldier who's been recovering for 10 months. We have to keep him mentally engaged. Let's go give him a hard time about the gasket.
So, I don't know. Maybe I'm ranting. Maybe maybe that's not. I mean, like, I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, and I agree. It's not to say that you should be a big old softy. I would express it more like you've got to create the conditions for success. And sometimes creating the conditions for success is just defining success. And that's sort of laying out rules and enforcing rules, right? Sometimes the conditions for success require a more personal touch, right? Every soldier's different. What motivates them is different. And creating the conditions for success necessarily involves motivating a soldier at the individual level. And some guys just need to be given a checklist. Some guys need to be treated like human beings. It comes with the territory.
Right. And yeah, it's hard to get that pulse. Yeah, I absolutely understand that.
And the higher you go, the harder that pulse becomes to get, right? So when I was a much younger officer, I used to get real disenfranchised by senior leaders who seemed to be like really far removed from the pulse. And now here I am, I'm a brigade staff officer. It's like, holy cow, I live in the ivory tower. Like, it's really hard. It's really hard to get the pulse, you know? And then even the people who work for me, my NCOIC, I'm used to having like a first sergeant or whatever going out and getting the pulse, but even my NCOIC lives in my same ivory tower with me. So I don't even have that cheat code anymore helping me do it. So I have a little more sympathy. Doesn't mean it's right, but I have more sympathy for it. I do find it humorous. You keep insisting you never had PTSD, but you drank excessively and you had anger issues, which you don't have anymore, by the way.
Well, that's because I'm sleeping now.
Okay. All right.
Because I went from sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night to getting actual sleep. So
okay, so maybe all the advice that your friends and leaders were giving you 10 years ago might have been a little correct.
Some people got to go through it. But
yeah. Why is that? Why do some people have to go through it?
it's just like kids, right? Like you could tell them not to do something, but like they're gonna have to, play a fire sometimes to realize they don't want to get burned again.
Okay. So it's almost like it's like a different level of understanding when you've experienced it. There's like you've internalized the message.
Yeah, and then that's why, like, for sure, like I don't think there's an answer for post-traumatic growth. But for me personally, I know my go-to is I just need to start taking action in life. I mean, that's why I don't wear a combat patch anymore. For the longest time, I didn't wear a combat patch, and I don't think I ever shared this story with anybody, just because it's like I don't think it's worth anyone's time. So, in a nutshell, I don't like to wear my combat patch is because I'm afraid of being that guy who just lives in the past, who's just all they want to do is just talk about a certain thing, whether it's that deployment or that football game or like I used to bench and deadlift this. I don't want my life and my identity to revolve around that ambush. And as proud as I am of my deployment, my service, and I am super proud of the guys I deployed with in the unit. Every time I see that 86 IBCT patch, like I have a lot of pride. I intentionally have rarely ever worn my combat patch because I don't want to look in the rearview mirror. I want to keep looking forward. I want to be in the present, enjoy the now, and moving forward. What am I doing next? What's going on next? In fact, I never wore my CIB for the longest time until the deployment, because I was like, well, I need to get some street cred with some guys. That way, like, when I'm bugging for stories and interview, I get some sort of street cred, which nobody knows what the CIB is. So joke's on me. Like, they didn't care anyways. But yeah, I don't want anyone to feel, I don't want to offend anybody or make them feel like I'm judging them for wearing their combat patch. Obviously, rock one, solid, good on you. But I personally don't wear it because I'm afraid of constantly seeing it and looking back and my mind staying in the past. And I just want to move forward. So that's honestly, if for anyone's watching and several people have asked me, like, why don't you wear a combat patch? And I'm just like, I kind of shrug it off really quickly. That's the story. I want to move forward in my life. I don't want it to identify me. I don't want it to be my identity. And yeah, and I don't think that's, people's objective of wearing one at all. I don't judge. But for me, that's why I don't wear one.
Do you think you'll ever get to the point where you don't feel like you risk getting trapped in the past? Like, will you ever wear it?
I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I'll wear it, but I know intentionally I don't, because of the fact I could let my mind linger there for longer than I'd like. And so that's why I don't wear it. I mean, you've seen me. I'm always just stacking the next thing. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm playing psychologist here. Maybe I'm just trying to avoid any pain or any issues. I feel like I just want to live life. I want to experience as much as I can. I want to do as much as I can. There's so many things I want to know, experience, and feel. And I just don't want to spend any of that time looking in the rearview mirror.
All right. So we're at an hour and a half right now. Not that I want to draw an end to this, but you and I get to talk almost every day, so I get to satisfy my personal curiosity on my own time. But what have I missed? What are we not talking about when it comes to post-traumatic growth?
It's weird. We've been talking about this for the last hour and a half, and I'm still a little hesitant on trying to give an answer because I don't want to be politically incorrect or offend anyone. But I will stand on what I said throughout this podcast, that for me personally, and perhaps it could help somebody else who's like me and need to get off the X, just by taking action, doing something that aligns with you spiritually, call it, emotionally, and just continually setting goals to move forward in life. And I think that's I know I'm drawing it out, but I think at some point I was I do like to just set goals and just kind of like, it might be almost busy work. I was doing that triathlon. I know you know about it. Basically, I was doing an ultra marathon, also triathlon, where it's essentially those like the Ironman race times by 2. And it was like maybe like 2 a.m. I got done doing I always forget the number, like a 5-mile swim, and now I'm doing like 200 miles on the bike. And I remember being on the bicycle, falling asleep, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't care about swimming or cycling. I kind of hate it at this point. Like none of it like motivates me. It was just a hard goal I wanted to do, and I'm just kind of like chasing my tail for the sake of chasing my tail. But when I stopped to say, what do I want to actually do in life? This business, this business brings a lot of meaning to me, a lot of energy, and I want to do it in my life. So for me, tactically, I've having lived my experiences and understand myself better, I know I need to find goals that makes me happy, that brings me some sort of fulfillment, and then just continually trying to become a better person, and pursuing excellence as much as I can.
Okay. Well, Sergeant Rajsombath, thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it, sir. I know we did a lot of rambling, so hopefully, I don't know if anybody's watching got something out of it.
Yeah. So if you're in the audience today and you have thoughts about post-traumatic growth, or you have questions that didn't get answered today, please leave us a comment. Maybe we'll bring Terry back on in the future and try to get those questions answered for you. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.